Good morning. My name is Rob McDougall. I'm the Acting High Commissioner of Canada here in Sri Lanka. It is my honor and my pleasure to introduce to you the Honorable Jason Kenney, the Minister of Citizenship, Immigration and Multiculturalism for Canada. I don't plan to take a great deal of time since you are here to listen to him and not me. But I will note that he has been an MP in Canada for the constituency of Calgary Southeast since 1997. I've been a senior member of the government of Prime Minister Harper since that government was first formed in 2006, and has been Minister of Immigration since 2008, when he's been associated with a great many important innovative changes in Canada's immigration policy and laws. I would only also draw your attention to the fact that there are two news releases on the table outside, for those of you who haven't seen them, and I would indicate that they include both the address for directing further questions to the Minister's press office, and also the mention of the Minister's Twitter account if you want to follow how he's been doing on his trip. So without further ado, I'll introduce to you the Honourable Jason Kenney.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. It's a real pleasure to be here in Sri Lanka. I arrived on Saturday morning. I'd like to also acknowledge the presence of one of my parliamentary colleagues, the Member of Parliament for Don Valley East, Mr. Joe Daniel. Thank you for being here, Joe. Joe represents a large number of Canadians of Sri Lankan origin. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm the first Canadian minister in Sri Lanka in, I gather, 3 years. And Sri Lanka is a very important country for Canada. As you may know, we have the largest Sri Lankan diaspora in the world, with some 300,000 Canadians of Sri Lankan origin who have made a huge contribution to Canada's prosperity and the success of our model of unity in diversity. And so I've been pleased to have some high-level meetings to discuss important bilateral issues, some of which I will be presenting to you today. First of all, let me make an announcement with respect to a aid project that we are funding. Canadians were troubled and saddened to hear of the recent devastating floods in this country. Our hearts go out to the victims of these terrible natural disasters, and so we'd like to reach out our hands to offer assistance, as we have done for some 40 years through our international development program here in Sri Lanka. In that spirit, I'm happy to announce that the Government of Canada will be providing 18,700 Canadian dollars in humanitarian assistance for families affected by flooding in 2 of the severely hit districts of Sri Lanka, the Mannar and Anuradhapura districts. The funds will be given to Caritas Sri Lanka, which is part of Caritas International, a confederation of worldwide Roman Catholic relief, development, and social service organizations. And indeed, I met with the director of Caritas Sri Lanka last night. Caritas will use the funds to provide immediate assistance in the form of blankets, bed sheets, towels, soap, and drinking water to residents of Mannar and Anuradhapura districts who lost their belongings in the flood. And I should say I also met with Mr. Pereira, who's a member of Parliament for one of the flooded regions, and he described to me how severe it is, and we really do express our regret. Canada is pleased to be able to support Sri Lanka's disaster relief efforts, and we hope the relief items will help families as they try to rebuild their lives. So now I'd like to turn to the principal reason for my visit, and that is to discuss the scourge of human smuggling, which is resulting in the exploitation of thousands of Sri Lankan migrants hoping for the opportunity of migrating to Canada. Let me be very clear. We're here to issue a warning that human smugglers will take your money, but they won't get you to Canada. Now, we all know that human smuggling is very dangerous. Every year, thousands of people die in human smuggling operations, like the 200 migrants bound for Australia whose smuggling vessel sank a year ago. This is every year thousands of people die in smuggling operations all around the world. In fact, let's be clear about one thing. The smugglers lie about getting people to Canada. In 2009 and 10, 2 ships carrying Sri Lankan migrants reached Canada. Many of the passengers were kept in immigration detention for months, and some are still being detained. Some, I should say, were deemed to be inadmissible to Canada and ineligible to seek asylum for national security grounds because of their involvement in organizations like the LTTE. Several have been barred, as I say, from applying on national security grounds, and many passengers who arrived, most in fact, have not obtained asylum in Canada. Some have already been returned to Sri Lanka. And let me be clear, the smugglers targeting Canada have been stopped. Since the arrival of that vessel in August of 2010, several planned large-scale human smuggling missions destined for Canada have been stopped. Thousands of Sri Lankans have made large down payments to smugglers to be taken to Canada, but they have been arrested, detained, returned, or left stranded in transit countries. And here is just one example, a story from broadcast by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which interviewed several migrants of Sri Lankan origin who were in Chennai and who had paid down payments of several $1,000s to Sri Lankan smuggling syndicates to be brought to Canada, but were left in Tamil Nadu without any follow-up, and in fact they were stranded, having lost their life savings. So there gives you one example of people who, sorry, somebody's phone is going off here. One example of people who have given money to smuggling syndicates, in this case in Tamil Nadu, to come to Canada. Their money was taken, but the smuggling syndicate disappeared. And this is happening over and over again. Now, we are cracking down on smugglers. Canada is investing $12 million to help transit countries combat human smuggling. Transit countries including Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Ghana, Togo, and Benin have helped to make these efforts effective. And I'm going to give you a few examples, but first, here is Prime Minister Stephen Harper at a press conference in Thailand last fall, where he's discussing our investment in interrupting human smuggling operations bound for Canada.
Bon matin, tout le monde. Good morning, everybody. Since the fall of 2010, intensified cooperation between the RCMP and the Royal Thai Police has thwarted the activities of human smuggling gangs. Several illegal operations have been blocked, and boats have been stopped before they can sail to Canada's shores. Our government is very much encouraged by these efforts. I have two purposes here today. First, on behalf of the Government of Canada, I'd like to thank the Government of Thailand for becoming a leading partner in the global fight against human smuggling. In particular, I should like to thank the Royal Thai Police and its branches, including the Central Investigation Bureau, the Thai Immigration Bureau, and the Marine Police Division for their energetic pursuit of some of the world's worst criminals. These are people who profit from exploiting the miseries and aspirations of some of the world's most vulnerable people. Second, I'm today announcing that our government has created a special program to support our partners here as they work to detect and prevent human smuggling operations throughout Southeast Asia. We will provide new equipment and training to several branches of the Royal Thai Police. Also, we will extend similar programming to partner countries throughout Southeast Asia. And of course, we will continue to fund counterterrorism initiatives with Thailand and other Southeast Asian partners.
So Sri Lankan smugglers have been arrested around the world. Criminals running Sri Lankan human smuggling syndicates have been arrested in Canada, France, West Africa, and Southeast Asia. Between October, and I'll give you some specific examples, between October 2010 and January 2011, Thai authorities arrested more than 200 Sri Lankan migrants for immigration violations in 4 operations, and it's believed that these individuals had paid a significant amount of money to these agents and were waiting to be smuggled to Canada. In July of 2011, Indonesia stopped a smuggling ship likely headed for Canada when the Indonesian Navy intercepted the MV Alicia, a smuggling ship carrying 84 Sri Lankan migrants. It's believed that the vessel was destined for Canada, and the migrants again had paid down payments of several $100,000 Sri Lankan rupees to the smuggling agents. In October of 2011, Togolese authorities detained 209 Sri Lankan migrants believed to have made initial payments of between 1.2 and 1.5 million rupees to be smuggled to Canada. Migrants had flown from Sri Lanka through India and Ethiopia to West Africa. Rather than boarding a ship for Canada, they were abandoned by the smugglers. Of the 209 that were detained, almost all have voluntarily returned to Sri Lanka with the assistance of the International Organization for Migration. In May of 2012, a Sri Lankan smuggling syndicate preparing a voyage to Canada from West Africa was broken up by coordinated law enforcement efforts. 6 smugglers fled to Burkina Faso, but were arrested there. 12 smugglers were arrested by Ghanaian authorities in Tima, and a 20,000-ton, 30-meter-long vessel belonging to the smuggling syndicate was seized. In June of 2012, 148 Sri Lankan migrants were arrested in Benin after having paid a smuggling syndicate to be brought to Canada. Media reports indicate that a smuggling syndicate brought the migrants to Benin before demanding more money and threatening to harm them. All 148 eventually agreed to return to Sri Lanka and were deported. These operations in West Africa, we believe, happened when syndicates recruited people, either in Sri Lanka or Tamil Nadu, flew them through India to Ethiopia to West Africa, left them stranded, never to get aboard a ship, never to go to Canada. But these people, in some cases, ended up stranded in immigration detention, in one case in a soccer field in Togo, for 4 to 5 months. In fact, I believe some people are still stranded there. In August of 2012, media reports indicate that a group of more than 100 Sri Lankan migrants were arrested again in Thailand for immigration violations. The migrants are believed to have made payments to the agents with the expectation of coming to Canada. And at least one other group has been subsequently arrested in Thailand in the very recent past. So the message is clear. The smuggling rings are fraudsters and thieves. These cases likely reflect only a small percentage of the Sri Lankan migrants who have paid smugglers to come to Canada. We estimate that over the past 4 years, thousands of Sri Lankan migrants have made initial payments of, as I've mentioned before, in fact, up to 1.5 million Sri Lankan rupees to smuggling syndicates. Those are the down payments, only to lose their money and face misery, threats, detention, and deportation. Transit countries have successfully stopped several planned voyages for Canada, and they will continue to do so. And here is a point I would like to emphasize. There is growing evidence that some agents claiming to represent smuggling syndicates taking people to Canada neither have the intention and certainly do not have the capacity to bring people to Canada. That is to say, they're simply taking the money with a fraudulent guarantee of migration to Canada with no intention of actually bringing people there. Now, I want to also underscore that Canada has changed its laws to crack down on human smuggling. Last June, our Parliament adopted the Protecting Canada's Immigration System Act, which includes tough new prison sentences of up to 10 years for those found guilty of organizing large-scale smuggling operations, and imposes fines of up to $1 million for the people who own the ships used in such criminal enterprises. We've also, the same law also removes the privileges that previously existed for people who arrived as refugees in smuggling operations. Migrants who arrive in Canada in a designated smuggling operation now face mandatory detention, potentially for 6 months or longer. They no longer get free health care. They no longer get work permits. They no longer get federal social benefits. And smuggled migrants who do get a positive asylum decision are not eligible for permanent residency in Canada, for at least 5 years. That means they have no privilege to sponsor family members for at least 5 years. And if we determine that the conditions have improved, in this case in Sri Lanka, during those 5 years, they may then be subject to deportation back to Sri Lanka. There is no guarantee that even if they needed protection initially, they will be able to stay in Canada permanently. Canada is also ending abuse of its asylum system. Under our previous system that we've just ended on December 15th of last year, it would take almost 2 years for asylum claimants to get an initial hearing. If they were rejected at that point, they could often stay for several more years appealing their asylum claim, all the while receiving generous social benefits before being potentially deported after several years. The new system will ensure that smuggled migrants who make asylum claims get an initial hearing in 60 days rather than 2 years. And if their claim is rejected, they will face a potentially immediate deportation. So we're talking about deportation for false asylum claimants coming in smuggling operations after 2 months rather than 5 or 6 years. And during those 2 months, they will not have access to benefits. If, after their initial hearing, they are deemed to be bona fide refugees, as I said before, they will not get permanent residency for at least 5 years. I want to underscore that Canada remains open for legal visitors and immigrants. Canada has taken these tough measures in order to protect our very generous approach to immigration and refugee protection. We welcome, in fact, 1 out of every 10 resettled refugees worldwide. We maintain the highest per capita levels of immigration in the developed world. We welcome some 4,000 Sri Lankans as permanent resident immigrants every year and have welcomed about 25,000 over the past 6 years. We welcome thousands of Sri Lankans as visitors, students, and foreign workers. And those who want to immigrate to or visit Canada should simply apply through the normal legal procedures. And those seeking refugee protection should pursue regional solutions through the UNHCR, through the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees. Now, Canada, I should also say that Canada's immigration system is becoming faster and more flexible for those who might have felt frustrated by it in the past. There are now new and more flexible avenues to gain permanent residency in Canada. For example, foreign students and temporary foreign workers and skilled tradesmen who work with their hands now have opportunities to get permanent residency quickly. And immigration programs are moving from wait times of several years to 1 year or less. And we're welcoming a growing number of visitors, students, and workers from Sri Lanka and around the world. So the conclusion is clear. Canada is stopping the smugglers. Thousands of Sri Lankans have been defrauded by the smugglers, promising trips to our country that never happened. And Canada's laws have changed, eliminating privileges and benefits for smuggled migrants. Now, before I take your questions, I'd like to address one other issue. We believe that there are a mixture of motivations for Sri Lankans seeking to be smuggled to Canada illegally. One of them is probably economic opportunity. But we are also very concerned to see that in this post-war environment, there appears to be a growing pressure for emigration from Sri Lanka, whether to Australia, to Canada, or to elsewhere. And this indicates to us that there are what we would call push factors in this country. And so that is why the Government of Canada, that's one of the reasons why the Government of Canada has expressed our profound concern about what we regard as ongoing human rights violations in this country, a lack of progress in political reconciliation, a failure of accountability for crimes that were committed at the end of the war. And that is why Prime Minister Harper has indicated that he will not attend the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting here in Sri Lanka this November unless there has been significant progress on the protection of human rights, on accountability for crimes committed, and on political reconciliation. And this is a message that I have conveyed to my counterparts here in the Sri Lankan government. Canada regards itself as a friend of Sri Lanka. The government of Prime Minister Harper, we believe, helped to hasten the end of the war by banning the Tamil Tigers as an illegal terrorist entity and the World Tamil Movement, by cracking down on their fundraising and political operations in Canada. We are opposed to all forms of terrorism and extremism, but we are also champions of human rights and human dignity, and we call on all of our all countries, and particularly members of the Commonwealth, to respect those universal values. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have.